Hello, and welcome to another episode of the EvokeCast. My name's Larry Goldie. I'm one of the coaches here at Evoke, and I'll be your host today. Today it is my great pleasure to welcome Jam McManus to the podcast. Jam is an Irish high-altitude mountaineer, expedition leader, and founder of Earth's Edge, one of Ireland's leading expedition companies. For more than 20 years, Jam has climbed and led expeditions across South America, Asia, and Africa. In 2022, he began attempting 8,000-meter peaks without supplementary oxygen. After several unsuccessful attempts, he reached the summit of Lhotse, the world's fourth highest mountain, without supplementary oxygen in 2026, becoming the first Irish person to do so. He has now set his sights on becoming the first Irish person to climb Mount Everest without supplementary oxygen in 2027. I've been working with Jam as his coach since September of 2025. Today, we'll discuss the lessons learned from high altitude climbing, long-term preparation, setbacks, and his upcoming journey toward Mount Everest. Jam, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Larry. Nice to chat to you.
Yeah. Thanks so much for taking the time to be here. I know you're on a completely different time zone, so hopefully it's not too late in Ireland right now.
It's all good, man. It's the middle of the afternoon here, so I think you have an early start, so I'm okay this side.
Yeah, excellent. Well, so I got to say, I'm not a big social media guy, and so I hadn't really been kind of following your climb this spring at all. And I would log into Training Peaks every now and then. I would see one of your days on Lhotse get uploaded in, and so I was kind of keeping tabs, thinking, okay, I've seen how Jam's doing. And then you kind of went dark for a while. And then I was on a family vacation on a climbing trip, and I get a text saying, Larry, I did it. I felt great. Thank you so much. And it just like, it made my day. I told everybody I was with. It was just like, I was so pumped when you pulled that off this spring. So, kind of
Yeah, it's a really interesting perspective, man. Most people see it on Instagram and don't see what's going on in the background. You're the complete opposite.
a
That's
total,
crazy.
well, I say all that because afterwards, after you and I had been talking, I did go onto Instagram and saw, I'm like, oh my gosh, he's been posting like every few days. And I was like, when I said, oh, I'm keeping tabs on you, I'm sure you thought that I was just following you on Instagram. And if I had been, I would have had a far better sense of what was going on. But
Yeah.
uh,
No, it was good. It was a good expedition. It was really fun for the most part. I'm sure we're going to get into it, but yeah, it's always good to be in Nepal, always fun, you know.
yeah. Okay, so I want to start way back here. So, growing up in Ireland, what first drew you to the mountains? Tell me a little bit about, uh, you know, your early experiences there.
Yeah, so I grew up in a really small town in called Roscrea in Tipperary in the middle of the country. Like it's comical talking to someone from the US about Ireland. It's so small and our mountains are relatively tiny. But yeah, from an early age, like loved being outside. Lucky enough to grow up in a time when there was plenty of unsupervised outdoor time. So from as soon as I could, I was outside running around causing trouble. And then my mom was a big inspiration to me. She got me into adventure sport, you know, hiking and climbing. And my first love actually was kayaking, expedition whitewater and expedition kayaking. So
Oh,
that was
wow.
really what I got into first. Yeah, some freestyle, but then expedition boating, and I kind of did that from to a high level from about 12 or 13 up to around 25, 26. And yeah, did some mountaineering. Like first time actually was in the Himalayas was on a kayak trip. Larry, I went out there with some friends to do a 300-kilometer multi-day expedition on the Sarap and Zanskar rivers in 2004, I think that was. And yeah, we were really green at the time. Like I would think I was 21 and we had a week left at the end of the trip. So we decided to try and climb a 6,000 meter peak in Ladakh called Stuckangry. So that was kind of my first high mountain trip. I got altitude sickness and turned around because we tried to do it in 2 days, but
Oh,
that was my first introduction to the Himalaya.
okay.
Yeah, and then kind of gradually over the years, I've kind of got more into um, mountaineering, really. I think, I don't know if it's an experience you see there, but a lot of my friends and peers who are into kayaking, it's quite a dangerous sport, so you kind of, a lot of us transitioned over to mountaineering or ultra endurance sports as the years went past. Kind of get out of the habit of like scaring yourself like day in day out. So yeah, so that's kind of moved over to doing mountaineering, and then got into mountain guiding through my company Earth's Edge, and like had a whole huge experience of that from 24 up to where I am now at 43. So that's been awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then like kind of, I suppose, sorry, you gonna ask me a question or?
I was just gonna say the thing I've always thought about kayaking is it's just like it just comes at you so fast where, any sport in the mountains, typically it's like, let's just take a break here and talk about this or like, you can't just
Yeah.
hit the pause button when you're in a kayak. The river has its own ideas and maybe there's an eddy and you can take a little break, but otherwise, that to me has always been what makes it so intense is just the on the fly, instantaneous decisions you have to make, some of them that are hugely consequential.
Yeah, it's just a little bit more out of control, and the risk just being in water, if you make a mistake, like it doesn't take long for you to drown if you're in a certain situation. So yeah, I loved it. It was amazing. Like I traveled the world, like did seasons working as a river guide in California and Africa and India, went South America, traveled the world with it. It was absolutely awesome. But yeah, nearly drowned a few times, once in Ecuador and then another time in India. And I was younger then. I didn't really have the emotional maturity to check in with the fact that I was scared, It's a very macho sport. It's like, okay, you're running down that class 5 waterfall, I'm going too, There was never a case at that time with my friends who would be like, oh, you know what, I'm not feeling it today, or that kind of thing. So yeah, I think that really was an awesome journey, but it kind of finished towards my late 20s when, you know, I wasn't I wasn't participating in that sport like the way I am now with mountaineering, where you're taking it like you're practicing all the time. As you know, like it takes to reach a high level in any of these sports, you need to be doing it like 5, 6 days a week, year on year. So I wasn't doing that. So yeah, that kind of chapter of my life ended. But yeah, as I said, I kind of got into um mountaineering more, and like in my late 20s and 30s I was leading trips with clients, and then also going on personal trips with friends to like bigger mountains in the greater ranges. And then like how I actually got into trying to climb 8,000 meter peaks was through injury. I was actually working in Scotland in the Highlands, which again are quite relatively small mountains, but super testing and how wet and cold
Yeah.
it gets there. And I was coming off the hill one day after kind of a long day with clients, and I was like walking at the back just out this valley, and I was like in a lot of knee pain, so it's really, really suffering with that. And I was like really felt like I couldn't really move properly, and I was like really concerned. Like obviously I felt at the time like, you always go into a dark place with these things, that I wouldn't be able to work and enjoy the mountains anymore. So when I got back to Ireland, that was in February 2020, the whole country locked down due to COVID pandemic. So I was like worried about my knee. My business
Yeah.
completely stopped as well. So I was like, oh my God. And I went in to see my physiotherapist who's been coaching me before I started working with you. And he was just like filled me with confidence. He's like, if you're willing to come off your feet and do a return to run program, we can get you back there. And because of COVID, like I wasn't going away leading trips. I just got into this amazing, like it was like a 15-month training block where I went from doing um one run in a week, which was 20 minutes long. I'll never forget it. Like 2 minutes walk, 2 minutes run, like
Yeah.
5 times, and then
Yeah.
like build up the volume 5% every week. And at the end of that, I did this 24-hour ultra challenge, like near where I live in Ireland now, is like 120K with 6,000 meters elevation gain. And when I finished that, I was like, oh, okay, cool. I'm pretty good endurance athlete here. Let's marry that with my ability as a mountaineer. And that's where the idea of trying to climb Mount Everest without supplementary oxygen came. Like, I'm not
Yeah.
this person who has this lifelong dream to stand on top of the mountain. I just fell in love with training in a process and seeing incremental, slow gains over time. I just love that. I love the sense of purpose it gives you. So, like I do like standing on top of these mountains when you can, but it's not really about that for me, to be honest. I just love the process of the whole thing. I think it's cool.
Yeah. Okay, so tell me, 2004, first time you went to the Himalaya for the kayak trip. What was your first uh, climb in the mountains where
Oh, the
in the Himalaya where you went there to specifically climb a peak?
first peak I climbed in the Himalaya. It's probably, God, that's a great question. What did I do there since then? Yeah, it's probably around quite a bit later, actually, back in about, I think 2014, I came out to climb to lead a trip on Island Peak, which is like a 6,000 meter peak near Everest.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and then since then, apart from my personal climbs on 8,000 meter peaks, it's more like climbing 6,000 meter peaks with clients. And some 7,000 meter peaks as well. I climbed Himlung a few years ago, and I've got a trip on actually this year to Bronce, another 7,000 meter peak. Did some stuff in Central Asia, like Peak Lenin and Mustigata as well. That was really fun. But yeah, a lot of it has been like commercial trips, guiding as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And so what year did you found Earth's Edge?
Back in 2007.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was pretty young, man. I had this. Like any 24, or not any, like most 24-year-old men, you have a lot of confidence based on absolute thin air. So you just go for it, which is good in a way, but
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. No, it's great. It's afforded me an amazing lifestyle and I love it. I love guiding as well. It's awesome to see people achieve amazing things on the mountain. I think it brings me great joy as well.
Absolutely. Yes. Okay. And so then when was your first attempt on an 8,000 meter peak?
Yeah, so in 2022, I attempted Everest without supplementary oxygen from the south side.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's actually the first time I chatted to Scott. I can't remember if I spoke to him before I went, but definitely when I came back, because
Hmm.
that trip, I learned a lot. So. That went pretty good up until my final rotation. I did a rotation on the Lhotse face up to 7,900 meters and then came back to base camp and then turned around to go for summit and was completely empty, man. I think it took me, I think 12 and a half hours to go from base camp to camp two. Or maybe that's a bit of an exaggeration, but I was really slow and I was like, I
Yeah.
didn't know what was going on. And I
Yeah.
came back to base camp and I got the doctors to check me out and I didn't, there was no obvious ailment. And I even, when I went back down to Kathmandu, I went into the private hospital and I got them to do like I don't know how I managed to do that, but they did an MRI on me and there was nothing. I had no pulmonary edema. And then eventually kind of asking around, it's the knowledge is so sparse, in Ireland and different parts of the world. But when I spoke to Scott, within a minute, he was like, "Oh, you had cumulative fatigue," and I was like, "Okay, all right,
Yeah.
cool." So that was a big learning.
Yeah.
Um, I definitely like for someone listening to this thinking of doing 8,000 meter peaks, like I think doing a small one first is definitely advisable. Like Everest is, yeah, it's way too much, something much too hard to start off with. But yeah, I really learned from that experience and gained loads of experience as well, like understanding how the mountain works from a logistical perspective and trying to understanding all the politics and all the stuff you need to ignore to stay fresh. And yeah, I just basically I didn't move fast on the rotations, but I did too much. I came
Mm.
out there probably a little bit too early and I did two 5,500 meter passes, two 6,000 meter peaks, and three rotations on the mountain, which in hindsight was too much. Yeah. And you just
Yeah.
didn't have a chance to recover. And by the time I went for it, I was too tired. Yeah.
Yeah. Jam, have you ever climbed a supplemental oxygen?
No, no.
No. Okay, so I want to dig into that a little bit. So, yeah, what is it about using O's that you've shied away from? Is it just for the ethics of it? Do you want the personal challenge? I'm super curious to hear why that's important to you.
Yeah, like I think I have absolutely no issue with people using O2 from an ethical perspective or any style and Xeon gas from that perspective as well. I think it's absolutely fine. The important thing is that people are honest in how they go. But for me, it's like, I really thrive on having a sense of purpose, like having a training goal and like at my level, like the amount of time I can commit to it, like if I use O2, then it's not going to be I mean, it's still extremely hard. Like you see people, but I'm not going to have to go to the levels of training and have that sense of purpose and have that level of commitment that I want. So, um, it wouldn't give me that. So that's why I want to go without O2. Just that kind of challenge element of it. It's such a difficult problem to solve. Like, it's like the training is, like takes such a huge commitment, and then even with all that your margin for error is so low. Like you can, if you get any kind of illness or sickness, you're pretty much finished. And yeah, just everything that goes into it. I just think it's a beautiful problem to solve. That's why I'm kind of drawn to it, really.
Yeah, no, I can certainly appreciate that. And I mean, it's such a pure form of high altitude climbing. Tell us a little bit about, what does it feel like
Yeah,
to not be using oxygen when you get above 8,000 meters? I mean, there's a
I was
reason they call it
going.
the death zone, right?
Yeah, like I have to be honest with you, Larry. Like when I described it there, it's like so like, oh, I love it, but your prize to actually go up there above 8,000 meter peaks without oxygen, it's in my experience, I've been above 8,000 twice now. It's absolutely horrendous. Like you wouldn't wish it on anybody, it's extremely tough. Like it's slow, like you're much slower, like your world becomes so small, like you just it's almost like being drunk, I think, is the thing. And like I experienced extreme hypoxia on Lhotse this year. Just to kind of explain a little bit about that. So I in 2025 I went to 8,320 something meters on Makalu. Okay, so and we go back, let's say, to 2022. So got cumulative fatigue on Everest. Then 23, I went to try and climb Dhaulagiri, the eighth highest mountain in the world. Had bad weather there, so nothing, didn't really learn anything that time. Then in 24, I tried to climb Everest again from the Tibetan side, but didn't get a visa, so came back and actually attempted to climb Lhotse. So, and again, did fine in the rotations, but I ended up getting a respiratory infection there. So my learning that time is I need to make the duration of the trip shorter because you just become, if you're there for 50 days, you become susceptible to infection. And then on Makalu, I went to 8,324 meters, I think. I got to within 160 meters of the top and nothing
Oh,
went wrong. I had like perfect weather, like everything pretty much went my way. And that was cool because that kind of like not cool. Yeah, maybe that's the wrong word, but like it kind of showed me that there was nothing tactically I needed to do on expedition. I just needed to be a better athlete, really. And that's how I originally got in touch with you guys and decided to take on full-time training, which we can get in and talk about, but it made a huge difference. But the experience on Makalu, one of the things on that mountain that's tricky is that the base camp is at 5,700 meters, which is extremely high. Like it's 400 meters off the top of Denali, or
yeah.
it's higher than Camp 2 on Aconcagua. It's massive. So the recovery is very, very hard there. So on that trip, I had a sleep at Camp 3, like I slept at 7,200 meters, but then was only getting down to 5,700 to rest. So when I went into and the sleep at 7,300 on Makalu, it really took a lot out of me. It was really a horrendous night, as it always is. But on Lhotse this season, I had a plan that I just wanted to touch 7,500 meters and come back down. I didn't want to sleep up there. So that's the strategy I took. And on my rotation, my last rotation on Lhotse, I had bad weather on my last rotation, and I only managed to go to 7,250 meters. The summit is 8,500.
Yeah.
So prior to me going to the summit on Lhotse, I'm getting to the point here, Larry. Sorry for the long
Okay, no
ramble.
problem. Yeah, take your time.
So what I was saying was that prior to going for the summit in Lhotse, the highest point I'd slept at was at 6,400 meters in Camp 2, and I'd only touched 7,250 meters. So, and I made my summit attempt on Lhotse from 7,250 meters. So I don't think on reflection I was acclimatized enough, because getting up to where Lhotse Camp 4 is, where I didn't just pass through, I didn't stay there to 7,900, I was really strong. But after that, from like 7,900 to 8,500, I really, really suffered a lot. Like I didn't physically reach my limit, but mentally I just got very anxious about like simple things. Like, for example, coming out of maybe 100 meters above, let's say, Camp 4, I was getting concerned whether I was on the fastest line, but I was on a fixed rope. Like, so, there's not really much choice,
Yeah,
you
right.
know, think it back, you're like, so your capacity to think properly was really not clear. And then I also, yeah, got confused a lot, and I hallucinated a fair bit. So what I would say is the style is amazing. Like it's such a cool challenge. But what I would say to people in my own lived experience, which is quite limited, you don't get that I'm on the top, let's take a photo, or, have that moment where you're really celebrating a summit like you normally would, because you're just not in that, you're so far off that headspace. And I
Yeah.
hallucinated quite a lot, man. Like it's you kind of laugh about it, but like it's so dangerous, man. It's so I think maybe I can see people who are like working as guides or have a professional reputation probably not talking about it so much, because the things that you potentially do, you would never do them in a professional capacity. Like it's crazy.
Hmm.
Like sitting down, just mad stuff. So yeah,
And
to be honest with you, like coming off Lhotse, I'm like really like happy I summited, but the beautiful thing is there's quite a bit I can work on to be better the next time around.
yeah.
Because my
Yeah.
immediate reaction, Larry, when I came off was like, I'm not doing that again. No way, like that was too much.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
When
it
you
was. When
once
I
you were
got back
thinking
down.
clearly again. Yeah.
Yeah, when I got back down, I was like, look, I mean, I don't know if we all, but a lot of us, like probably people listen to this podcast, ultra runners and mountaineers, like there's a certain amount of suffering that we all enjoy. But this was just, it wasn't like that I had to push. It's not like, running for 24 hours or whatever, and the last 10 you find harder. This was just psychological torture, just the confusion and things. So, but as I said, what I can change is I can go higher on the rotations, and take some positives from it. I made my summit time. Most people climbing Lhotse, they start from 7,900, so they have like a 6,000 meter elevation gain on the summit day. I did it from 7,250, so I had 1,250 meters. So, you kind of look at that and go, okay, we made it, and we'll learn and we won't do it again. But I did a big summit day without
Yeah.
O2, so it gives me confidence, and then we have time to improve and get stronger in the next 12 months. So yeah, I'm
Yeah.
back. I'm signing up for more punishment.
I love it. Okay. Yeah. Well, first of all, you do know like the three most important attributes of a mountaineer. I'm sure
Go
you've
on.
heard. Yeah. For obviously, there's willingness to suffer. The second one is a short memory, and I can't remember the third one. So, Uh,
Around stupidity, no doubt. Yeah, but
yeah,
yeah,
you obviously got those. Uh, so when you're up at that elevation, so you talked about hallucinating, talked about kind of being confused. Uh, I'm super curious about just, the with the lack of oxygen in the air, do you feel like you're suffocating? Do you feel like you just can't catch your breath? Do you feel winded all the time? I'm curious to hear what that part feels like.
yeah. What does that feel like? You don't feel winded, but you just have to take so many breaths before you can take another step, Like you
Hmm.
really, it's slow. Like I wouldn't say you felt winded. I think the Sherpa do because they move in such a style like that they walk, 5 or 6 or 10 steps and then they stop. Whereas I kind of try and slow the whole thing down and just take a step when in a rhythm, and that rhythm gets really slow, like
Hmm.
really, really slow.
Yeah.
So yeah, I wouldn't say out of breath, but you're definitely breathing a lot, that's for sure.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
yeah, you're sucking in the air like as best you can. But I'm not got to the point where I'm um, breathless or needing to kind of keel over and stop. Yeah,
And were you up there climbing alone? Did you have a Sherpa with you, or tell me a little bit
yeah,
about that?
yeah. So I think that's something that, to be honest with you, like my ego wants to go completely solo, but it's so risky. So what I did this year is I climbed, did the rotations and the trek and all that bit by myself, but then I hired a Sherpa for the summit push.
Okay.
So he sharing, we actually met on in Camp 2. He'd been on Everest the previous day. So I linked up with him in Camp 2, and he so how we worked that is basically like I made a decision before going up there. If I ran into trouble, like if I wasn't fit enough to climb without oxygen, I wasn't really interested in summiting. So he had left 2 bottles of oxygen in Lhotse Camp 4 after his Everest climb. So we met up in Camp 2, hiked up to Camp 3 together, and then moved up from there. So he was without oxygen as far as Lhotse Camp 4, and then he went on oxygen and carried the spare, basically, on a regular.
Okay.
Yeah. So like
Yep.
I think, you kind of want to do it in, I know some of your athletes like David Kotler and all that, they do it completely solo, and like I've total respect for that. It's very, very nice style, but it's really risky, man, because like you can just fall asleep up there or decide like a drunk person that you're going to disconnect from the rope, or
Yeah.
just be convinced it's this direction when it's that. And like I still carry all my own gear and share the tent if we're sharing a tent and food and all that. So it's a style I feel happy with, but for sure I have a Sherpa with me on the summit push, and it'll be the
Yeah.
same on Everest next year, definitely.
Yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense, and it seems incredibly wise style to climb in. Uh,
Yeah,
yeah, something that I hadn't gotten to ask you, but I've been curious about. So that seems like that to me, that's an incredibly good balance of like pushing yourself to climb without oxygen and to do it in a good style, but as guides, we are basically professional risk managers, and
Mhm.
that shows me that you've chosen to take some steps to give yourself a little bit of a margin. If anything does go wrong, you have the ability to get on oxygen if you start to get,
Yeah,
cerebral edema, you know, quickly have somebody there that can get you on O2, help you get down the mountain and hopefully survive the whole
yeah.
experience. So, yeah.
And have somebody there as well, like something I didn't stress with you, or I forgot to mention is like when we met in Camp 2, we just met, and like the Sherpa are absolutely amazing, but sometimes they put a little bit too much stock in what their clients want, with O2 or without. But I was just very clear to him, like, if you're checking in with me and you're not comfortable and you think I'm getting, um, you know, cerebral or pulmonary edema, or you're not happy with my condition, then you make the call to turn down, because why you have someone there who's on oxygen, who's that little bit or significantly more coherent than you are.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, because yeah, it just de-risks it, and then as I said, you're still doing it in a fairly nice style as well. Yeah, so it's all good.
Yeah. Uh, what did you find? What were some other sort of simple tasks that you had to do high on the mountain that just became incredibly difficult because you weren't using oxygen?
Yeah. I mean, it's all the classics like putting on and taking on and off your boots and this stuff. Like it's
Yeah.
just so challenging. One thing that I do, which I started doing this season, I heard someone else doing it. I heard it on a podcast, and I think it's really good. Is I set a little alarm on my Garmin. So every
Hmm.
half hour it's going off. And that was kind of a cue for me to like have a little sip of water and take on some food. Now I didn't always do it, but I thought that was really, really good, to kind of
Yeah.
help me stay on track. Um, but yeah, like um, yeah, just everything is, like changing, like moving over an anchor, and just, especially when you're coming back down, like, you're belaying on stuff that you would quite easily walk down normally. You wouldn't even
Hmm.
want to be on a rope, but you're just so tired. And that was pretty good. Like, um, yeah, like everything is just that little bit harder, Larry. I don't have anything really for you for any good stories specifically, but yeah, you're just slower. It's really kind of, um I don't want to feed into the Irish stereotype of us drinking too much, but I have had that experience before, where
Right.
you late in the night, maybe 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, you decide you've had enough and you're going to walk home, and you live like 10 miles away, but you're just on this mission and you're just going, but you're not really thinking. It's kind of, that's the easiest way I can describe it.
Yeah.
That you're just
And then
on doing
about
that.
5 miles into that, you realize what a terrible idea that was.
Yeah, because it's the middle of winter and you only have a t-shirt on or something. But like, yeah, it's that kind of, it's just like you're not the full chilling really is the best way to put it. But yeah, everything gets a little bit harder. Um yeah, but then once you come down, like once I got to like 8,000 meters, like I was fine again. Like, of course, my whole summit push was, 3.5, 4 days long, and the actual from 7,250 up to 8.5 and back down to Camp 2 at 6.4 was 30 hours. But once I came back down to like 7.9, I felt pretty good. I was fine, moving pretty well. It was a big day, but yeah, once you kind of got out of that really high death zone area, I became quite, I was doing much better and had good energy at that point.
So it is pretty dramatic that way that you really notice a difference when you cross that 8,000-meter line.
Yeah, I think like having chatted to some people who've done it, like I think the where so I've heard, I think it's individual, but like I've heard people say like, oh, once you cross 8,500 meters on Everest, it really starts to get funky. But I think it all depends on, in my case, what's giving me a lot of confidence is for next year is that like I think I need to just take at least one, like I spend a night at 7,000 or maybe 7,200 meters and touch eight. Then I'll be that whole extra rotation will really count to me, when I go over 8,000 the next time. And while I'll be coming from sea level, like I'm planning to climb Aconcagua with clients in February, and then, my summit attempt will be somewhere in May. Like I am in between those. I'm coming from sea level, like, so I'm pretty much acclimatizing from zero. But there is a bit of muscle memory. Like once you've felt any altitude, once you've felt 8,000 the first time, it's easier to you're better prepared from it. You've just been there, done that kind of thing. I don't know
Yeah.
if there is any physiological evidence in that. Maybe but
Well,
um,
certainly there's a ton of anecdotal evidence that the more time you
yeah,
spend at high altitude, the better your body learns to acclimate each time you go back there. So, physiologically, I couldn't tell you why that happens, but I would
yeah.
say it's almost indisputable. So many people will describe that. And, many of the world's best high altitude mountaineers, that is sort of their superpower is they tend to acclimate really well and it tends to get better each and every trip.
Mm. Yeah. So hopefully, like, yeah, for me in my experience, like once you go over 8,000, it all starts slowing down. But hopefully, with more rotations and higher rotations next year, I'll be a bit more comfortable for a bit longer. But
Yeah.
yeah. But Everest is just like you're contending with a little bit more. Obviously, an extra 350 meters on top of Lhotse, but then you have to deal with the crowds as well, which is manageable, to be honest. Like, I think that's over egged. Like this season on Everest, there was one day there was 270 people on the mountain, and then every other day there was less than 50. So I think if you're prepared to wait till like after, if you time your run that you're going for somewhere between the 23rd and the 28th, I think you'd be okay crowds wise. You just have to hope for a very, very low wind day and you should be all right.
Yeah. And you'll try from the south side again.
Yeah, I think so. Like I've spoken to people who think the north side is better because there's less crowds, but excuse me, the issue I have with it, like one of the things that I did on Lhotse and I missed on Makalu because you couldn't really do it is to get down to 4,200 meters in between the rotations. I think it makes a massive difference to be somewhere where there's grass and there's yaks and there's like it's just a little bit like more there's thicker air basically. Where on the north side it's kind of quite a distance to get and an effort to get below 6,400 meters.
Right.
So it's just so high to be coming back down to try and rest at that elevation. To me, it's crazy. You're getting weaker all the time. Even at Everest Base Camp, I think you're getting weaker by the day. Especially if you're trying to do a no O2 summit. Like if you're using oxygen, your buffer is so much wider. But I will be going from the south side for those reasons. And finally,
Yeah.
like the other big one with the Chinese side is they might decide to give you a visa, or they might not, and they won't tell
Yes.
you until the last minute. So
Right. I
yeah,
know. Yeah, I had a number of friends whose trips there this spring got canceled because the
yeah,
Chinese basically shut down the whole north side.
yeah. And the other thing is, man, like in my opinion, okay, which is it's just one opinion. Like the Khumbu Icefall, it's not what it was, because that sheet of ice there, it is melting. Like the features, even since I was first there in 2022. They're not as big. And it's upsetting, like, but even on the when I came down on May 20th on the way back down from my summit, like the Lhotse face was melting out as well.
Hmm.
Like that's like the amount of blue ice there and how thick that sheet of ice is it's getting much thinner, like coming over kind of the hump to come down out of Camp 3 and back down towards the Bergschrund before you get into kind of, let's say, the flatter Western Coombe bit, like that's melting out. Like you're starting to see quite a lot more rock there. So the Khumbu Icefall being this, like, of course it's dangerous, but it's not what it was in my opinion.
You think it's less dangerous than it used to be?
I think so, yeah. In my opinion, yeah.
But it, I mean, wasn't it a massive ice fall that closed it for quite some time this spring while you were there?
Yeah, but like that didn't actually affect me. Like I only arrived like I timed my run quite late because I didn't need to be in I don't think it makes sense to arrive out in Nepal in the first week in April and you're not going to summit till the 20th of May. It's too long. So I didn't arrive out. I didn't get to Everest Base Camp until the end of April.
Okay.
So by the time I was like ready to go up through the ice fall, I think I went up the day before it opened.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, it's a tricky one, Larry, because you can't stand there and kind of tell somebody else, like the fixing team, like the icefall doctors, oh, it's safe. You guys should go and fix it. Because
Right.
as I'm sitting down drinking my latte in the fucking in the coffee shop in base camp, it's like, okay, go
Yeah.
ahead, guys. I feel it's safe. So you're not like shouting from the rooftops, but like, man, before, like, the line is weaving around and you're like, going across these, like, it's sketchy, there's stuff over your head. And like, there was a bit of that this year, but not as much as previous years. And like, talking to people who were there 15, 20 years ago, like, they're saying it's not as bad. But,
Hmm. Okay.
I think the thing with Everest is you're mixing like people who are mountaineers and then with people who are influencers and, I think drama sells, Larry, is what I would say, so
Okay. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
I That's undeniable for sure. And you do get some relatively inexperienced mountaineers on the mountain because it's the world highest mountain that, so many people want to climb it. And we all know there's plenty of folks up there that don't have much climbing experience. And,
yeah,
the route that gets set through there has to be accommodating for people with limited skill. So I'm sure you would view it a little differently if you come from a climbing background.
yeah, yeah. That makes sense for sure. I agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah. So you just touched on it a little bit, but when we first started working together last fall, your goal was to go to Makalu, and then
Mm.
it was kind of late winter when you made the pivot to Lhotse. Can you just talk a little bit about kind of your decision making to make that switch?
Yeah, it was around being able to get down low between the rotations.
Hmm.
So like on Lhotse or Everest, the base camp, Everest base camp is 5,400 meters. So on Makalu, it's 5,700. But the critical difference is to get to 4,200 meters, like on Everest Lhotse, you can hike that in four. I think I was doing that in 4.5 hours. Just not even
Hmm.
not even running, like just fast, brisk
Yep.
walk. Where on Makalu, you have to go down through this huge glacier, which is, or not glacier, sorry, what could I say? Like this big moraine field, like
Hmm.
which is quite susceptible to rockfall, and the route through it is not defined. And then when you get down there, the tea house where you're going to, it's not as comfortable. Like I think it's 4,400 meters, but it's very, very basic, where in more recent times, like the Khumbu Valley has just become more and more luxurious. So it's not as good a place to rest. And then what I was doing on Lhotse is I was able to jump in a heli to take me from Fariche, where I was staying, back up to Everest Base Camp. So
Okay.
that I could get that if I could talk to a guy who was able to get me on the heli pretty cheap. So that was saving quite a lot of energy to fly back up again. I
Yeah.
did that a couple of times, and that's the reason really.
Yeah.
I mean, you could potentially do your rotations on Makalu. Like if I hopefully I will climb it again. I think I'd just try and do the rotations. And then fly down to Lukla for a couple of days rest and then fly back up. But that's very, very expensive to do on Makalu compared to Lhotse, just with how remote the base camp is.
Right. But yeah, getting down to those lower elevations, your body just recovers so much better. You probably have much better appetite. You can, pack on some calories and sleep through the night. And
Yeah. Oh, it makes, man, like we talk about rest and recovery. It's like diet, sleep, and like obviously we don't talk about it at sea level, but it's oxygen as well. So if you don't have
yeah,
all those three, you're getting weaker. You're not recovering at all. So yeah,
yeah,
that's the big reason, and it makes Lhotse and Everest, like Everest Southside, it's the big advantage of it over Everest Northside for sure, that you can get low easily. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, I'd love to pivot a little bit and talk about my favorite topic, training. Uh,
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, from my perspective, you worked so hard. No matter what I threw at you, you did it. Oftentimes you would go above and beyond. Like you put in the time and energy, and obviously it paid off for you. But yeah, when you think back at some of the training that you did, I just told you to do
Mhm.
it. I'm not going to
Yeah,
say
yeah.
we did it.
Yeah. We did
Yeah,
it together, Larry. Yeah.
what were some of the workouts that you feel like were the most helpful in preparing you for this trip?
Yeah. Like, I suppose something to share like with people, and a lot of people on the listen to this will get this, and maybe other people can't relate it to at all. Like, I love training, and I'm not I don't struggle with motivation to train. The risk I have as an athlete is when I'm not being coached, I tend to overdo it and get some kind of soft tissue injury or do the wrong things. So that was not to blow smoke up your arse, Larry, but that was the big thing. The big change is just being kind of coached to make sure that we were like building properly. And like, I think probably four things that we changed the most was like more rest. That was
Hmm.
definitely my previous coach, who's really, really awesome as well, but he didn't have a mountain background. He just understood um, training principles really well. He said to me, like, I've given you a 7 day plan and take a rest day whenever you feel like taking one. But I'm
Yeah.
just not the kind of person that's going to take a rest day, you know?
Yeah.
So we moved to like a full rest day, and then we have this. I do that on a Sunday, and then on a kind of an active rest day on a Wednesday, which is like basically a little walk or like a bike ride for an hour. That made a massive difference. And then I remember at one point, like I do a big vert day on a Saturday, as you know. I remember at one point, I don't know when it was, maybe it was January. You suggested me to get on the bike in one of the easy weeks instead of doing the vert day on my feet. And the following week, man, I was just like on fire with like in the gym and on the intervals and stuff like that. So the rest was huge. Um, what else? I think more vertical meters, that made a
Hmm.
difference for sure. We made my
Yeah.
training more specific. I was kind of like had it that I needed to be doing a lot of aerobic volume, which I was doing previously, but I was doing some of that on the bike, or it's easier for me to do that kind of on undulating trails rather than like really trying to chase vertical meters. So that made a big difference. We did more volume as well.
Hmm.
We just did like my volume went up probably an average of extra 5 hours a week, I would say. I don't know what the exact numbers there, but we did more volume. And then finally we did more specific strength training.
Hmm.
So yeah, that we did like a proper, max strength or get stronger block. And then we did ME training, which, like what I would say is like I've listened to like your podcast and I've read like Uphill Athlete and all that, but
Hmm.
reading and listening to something and then applying it properly to yourself are two different things, because
Yes.
with the best will in the world, you can be quite selective in how you interpret that stuff to kind of suit you or create like,
Yeah.
where I just love being accountable to somebody. Like that's just who I am. As you said, like I'm doing the training. You're not forcing me to do it. Like it's not obviously you want me to succeed. But it's ultimately down to me to do the sessions for myself, and I love that, and that accountability piece really works for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I think the accountability is so important for so many people, both just knowing that there's somebody who's kind of keeping tabs on you and is going to hold you accountable if you skip something. But then, I think one of the benefits of a coach, and I'll speak, I coach myself and I'm nowhere near as good with my training as I am with all of my athletes, is uh, just being removed from that person, you can see sort of the big picture progression of the training a lot better. And you can pick up on the little cues of, oh, Jam's really getting tired. Like, hey, skip the, the bike ride tomorrow after the strength workout. Let's just, dial it back a little bit. Just having someone that can give you that outside perspective and that can see when you're sounding fatigued, or conversely can be like, oh yeah, you're feeling good, let's push things a little bit. And just that ability to have this objective voice, uh that's you know that's not you.
Yeah, yeah,
Basically somebody who's got your best interest in mind but is not talking yourself into things. uh
yeah,
yeah, and ultimately, I think you nailed it right from the start. One of the most important training principles we use with every athlete, from, you know, people just starting training for the first time to the most elite high-level athletes, this idea of stress the body, rest the body. And it's like you apply that stimulus, but you honestly get stronger. Your body adapts when you're resting, not when you're out there, for 8 hours, banging out 3,000 vertical meters in a day. You were crushing yourself at that point. And then it's the following days when your body adapts that you actually get stronger and you get fitter. And so,
yeah.
yeah.
But like, I mean, case in point, like, as I said, like following you guys, your material, like since probably 2021, and I'm sure it's all like pretty much to a podcast or, different chapters of books or whatever you have, or like training advice on your website and all that. Like it's probably saying like in bold letters, like take rest days, take plenty of rest everywhere. But like I didn't read that, it didn't suit me to not in any intentional like way where I'm like, oh, I don't believe in that. You just don't, as you said yourself, even trying to train yourself, like it's a disaster because you're just not accountable to someone. And yeah, having somebody looking at you like from the external places is it makes a huge, huge difference, And the things I think people can get caught on is like there's nothing like with total respect to you, Larry, there's nothing crazy like, we don't have any mad like training techniques or some
Mhm.
secret sauce that you have there that you're applying to me. Like it's just basic stuff like where, but it just compounds and all this stuff together just makes such a huge difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what about kind of the mental aspect of climbing mountains? Do you do anything to help with your mental performance, any sort of mental training, mindfulness, meditation?
Yeah. Like I think it's like the thing about that is like I think especially when we talk about people climbing Everest specifically, like it's kind of there's people that have made careers on speaking circuits talking about, iron mindset or, blah blah blah. But like in reality, like for me, like consistent training over time creates the space for you to like handle those situations much, much better. Like that you're, the line that you touch where you're going to redline and shit the bed and basically run out of energy, the better an athlete you are, the chances of you hitting that line are less. So, and again, like for me, I would say what I would be concerned with my personality type is not knowing when to turn around. That'd be kind of that's more my focus. Like because I will keep pushing, like, and that becomes a risk. So bringing awareness to that. But from an actual mindset perspective, like while I'm actually climbing, like I'm just kind of focused on one or maybe two or three things, eat food, water, have a look around, try and take in the in conditions, like kind of looking, making sure the conditions aren't worsening. Simple things like keeping on top of the basics. And then like I know this year on Lhotse at one point, like I really, really, really didn't want to keep going. And
Yeah,
then I thought about like coming back like fifth year in a row at no summit and how
yeah,
that would go down. I having to tell my family and my friends and all that. So it was quite what's the word? Extrinsic. but it worked in that moment. I
Yeah.
was just like, no, like we keep going, like, and I'll keep going. But like, yeah, it's so tough, man. I think on average above 8,000 meters, I was gaining about 30 meters an hour. So it's so slow. So that was probably like 11 or 12 in the morning, and I didn't summit till 3 p.m. So which was late. So yeah, I think, sorry, I'm kind of rambling at you, but yeah, I think the mindset, you get a strong mindset from being physically strong. I think that was what I would recommend people. Don't worry about that so much. I think in the moment you'll step up to the plate if you have the capacity to do it. That would be what I would think on that one.
But yeah, I mean, you had a 30-hour summit day. There's got to be times where you're just like, "Oh my God, I want to be done."
Yeah.
And that's where you need a deep well. You have to be able to really dig deep, and certainly what you described, that thought of like, "Oh God, I don't want to go home and tell everybody that I couldn't do it." That does drive you to a degree, but for me as a guide, one thing I've seen in taking people up plenty of mountains. Nothing, as challenging as an 8,000-meter peak, but I've had people with pretty low level of fitness, but they just refused to quit. They just were tough. And,
Mm.
I think having that determination can take someone so far where, you know, every morsel of their body wants to just turn around, start walking back downhill, or just take a break and, call it. But, it's that determination that will get you there. And so, I mean, it sounds to me like, that's something that comes pretty natural to you. And I'm curious sort of what your self-talk sounds like during like the hardest moments. Like, what do you tell yourself when you're like, oh God, I'm so worked right now. I want to be
Yeah.
done.
Yeah, like it is. I think it's hard to describe that. Like there is in fairness, there is a massive mental toughness that I have for sure. Like no doubt about that. And whether that's something I've been given by nature or it's been nurtured in me, like my parents have massive work ethic and not afraid of pushing themselves for sure, and that's something I've always had. Um, but I do think like that can get you only so far, like there is a limit to that. And as I said, it can be quite dangerous, that mindset, if you don't, or if you're not aware of it. And I will come back to the training. And like for me in that moment on Lhotse where I wanted to turn around, it was just kind of like going, okay, like you're going to turn around now and you're going to go back down and have not made it again? And I was just like, no, I don't fancy that. Like, and then it was back to it, get back to
Yeah.
moving really slow. Like, so it didn't stay with me for long, but that was just kind of thinking about the consequences of that decision. Um, yeah, once I thought about that for a few moments, I was just like, let's keep going. There is still enough time to try and summit. It was good, reasonable weather, not perfect, but not too windy. So I decided to keep going.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Uh, okay, a little pivot here. So when you're not climbing mountains for yourself, you work as a mountain guide, taking people on expeditions all over. I'd love to
Yeah.
hear just a little bit about how your decision making differs when you are guiding and responsible for your guests, people that you have out there with you, compared to when you're on a personal trip like this one. Do you feel like the your risk calculus changes much, or how do you?
Oh, massively so. Yeah. I think it's chalk and cheese is a bit of an exaggeration, but yeah, it's completely different. I think when you're guiding, like you're just thinking in such a different way. Like you're constantly checking in with people and watching them move, and especially in a high altitude environment, especially working on a 7,000 meter peak, like your ability, if somebody does get into serious problems, where maybe they're not able to move on their own of their own will, um, can be a serious problem because even, I'm pretty comfortable at altitude, particularly 7,000 meters. I feel pretty comfortable at that height, but your ability to help someone at that height is so greatly reduced. So, I think you're just, maybe a little bit like you saying, Larry, that you're not as good as coaching yourself as you are other people. You're professional, it's a different thing. Whereas when you're looking after yourself, you just don't treat yourself with the same respect, do you? You just don't think in the same way. So, you're definitely not willing to redline clients. You're, building a rapport with them, especially on a longer Himalayan expedition. So you kind of know a lot more about them over time and how they move and how they operate and what their kind of baseline kind of psychological output is. So, if someone is usually talking and then suddenly they're not, you've got these issues. So you're just much more aware, but you're nowhere near your own limits. So it's completely, you shouldn't be anywhere near your own limit when you're physically when you're working with clients. So yeah, it's very, very different. And your decision making, um, your kind of no or go or no go decisions are completely different as well. It's much, much different. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good question though. I haven't really thought about that so much before, but yeah, it's completely different. God, like
Yeah. Well, no,
you
I
wouldn't even,
mean,
there's no way you would even work on an 8,000 meter peak without oxygen. It would just be, I don't think you would do that. Like you're just,
yeah. No, I
yeah.
don't think you could make a strong case for why that makes any sense at all.
People
Yeah,
would be
something
looking
I,
on and they'd be like, "Oh my God, that guy, he's the mountain leader. Wow, that's crazy. He's
yeah.
the yeah, yeah." But no,
I'm
no, for
gonna
sure.
guide this whole trip blindfolded. Are you guys cool with that? No, it's I often when I'm guiding, I start the trip by telling people like, hey, we've got a couple goals on this trip. The first one is to bring everybody home safely. And that, basically takes precedence over everything else. And it's gonna dominate our decision making. So,
Mm.
for whatever reason. But, honestly, people don't care if they make the summit or not if they don't make it off the mountain, right? So, uh,
Yeah.
that has to be the gold standard. And in my experience, many people don't even care if they make the summit, if they just have a great time and an amazing experience out there. And certainly some people are much more summit oriented, but I feel like the summit is it's a little bit lower in the priority line overall when you have people out there. It's like keep them safe, show them a really incredible time and experience, and then if you get to the top or if you ski the most incredible snow you've ever skied, those things are the bonus, but ultimately,
Mm.
you know, you got to bring them home alive.
Yeah, for sure. Totally. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, last couple of questions I have here for you, Jam. This trip obviously was hugely successful. Again, congratulations on being the first Irish person to accomplish this feat. But I would bet that accomplishments like this really rest on the lessons from some of the failures you've had in the past. So I'm curious if there's something that, one of the expeditions that you did in the past that didn't work out really well, uh, taught you that led to the success on this trip.
Yeah. So I kind of mentioned earlier on, like I suffered from cumulative fatigue in 2022, and then in 24 I got a respiratory infection. So I picked that up in base camp, I think, because I was at altitude so long, I just became a little bit immunocompromised. But the big one was on Makalu, like where nothing really happened. I just had to turn around due to exhaustion. I didn't have enough in me to get to the summit. Um, and that was cool. Like this self-talk after that was like Makalu was talking to me, and it was like, what are you willing to sacrifice to climb the mountain? It was like it was very nice self-talk. And that like taught me it really got me to look at obviously starting working with you guys and being coached full time, but from a lifestyle perspective, I just took my like sleep and rest and all that stuff to another level. So that was really, really cool moment for me in my life to kind of realize like if you want something this big, you have to be so disciplined in all the different aspects of your life because to take the training volume, you need those qualities in your life. Um, so that was a huge learning, like for sure. I think the failures really add to everything. So that's probably a big one. Um, that was probably the single biggest one, that kind of turning point where it was just like you need to go to another level. My preparation for Makalu and all the other peaks was good, but it just wasn't good enough. And then this year as well, man, it was kind of weird. Like obviously I summited, but as I've kind of mentioned, like I wasn't super happy with the style. So I've got some good learnings from the type of rotations and how many I want to do while still having made the summit. That was really nice to get those kind of not to be coming off Lhotse kind of going, oh yeah, I did great and I summited, like to be coming off it going, oh, there's some things we can tweak there to really help with the hypoxia. That was cool too, yeah.
Yeah, awesome.
Big ones there.
Okay, last
Last
question.
one. Okay, make it a good one, Larry.
All right. Well, we're going to get a little philosophical now, but yeah, is there something that you've learned from mountaineering that you feel like you've taken into the rest of your life? What
Hmm.
are some of the like bigger picture lessons that you take from the mountains? I mean, obviously, when we're out there climbing mountains, we are not saving the world. We're not really even making the world a better place. But I feel like you bring back a different perspective when you're out there
Hmm.
doing something that many people would call frivolous, but it affects who you are when you are in the ordinary world interacting with other people. I'm curious what
Yeah.
that looks like for you.
Like I've been privileged enough to go to the mountains like my whole life and particularly expeditions, man, when you get to go offline and just step out of your normal day-to-day life for so long. I know as a mountain guide, like life is very fun, but I am back in Ireland, like kind of running my business. It's pretty kind of computer heavy, but I think when you go on expedition, you get this step out and perspective to kind of look at things like relationships or where you're living or the people in your life and reflect on those and see the stress points. But I think for me, when you ask that question, like the biggest thing is like the training, really, like and realizing like if you can find discipline in your training, like you can unlock capacity that you didn't really know you had. Um, because you meet people like in your work who tell you like, oh, I can't do this or I can't climb that mountain. But unless you actually are willing to dedicate yourself to training, you don't know what's in you, and finding having to go to another level, like are deciding to go to another level in the last kind of 12 months and going to stay at it for the next 12, like that's been awesome, like because it just shows you like if you're consistent at anything, like through your training or professionally or with anything in life, change will come for sure. Like you'll get better at it. So
Yeah.
um that's probably the biggest thing I think that like if you're disciplined, you can unlock levels of performance that in anything that you didn't know you had.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it makes me think I one thing I talk to my athletes about all the time is trying to find a way to make the training enjoyable because you're going to spend many, many more hours training than you are on the mountain on the trip that you're training for. And so to find enjoyment in sort of the process,
Mm.
not have everything weighted toward just the outcome. Obviously, with a expedition like you were just on, you really want to make it to the top, and there is some emphasis put on the outcome, but the process of getting there, if you can find joy in the training and find joy in just that knowledge that you have made yourself stronger, fitter, a much better athlete. I think even if you don't get the weather or you pick up a weird respiratory infection, you can still look at the whole
Mhm.
process as, a giant win overall.
Yeah, I totally agree, man. I think if you're chasing the high of a summit, I think you're kind of setting yourself up to fail a little bit or to have a massive come down post expedition, whether you summit or not. I mean, even summiting like there's an aspect of like climbing Everest that it's kind of appealing to just keep trying and never do it in a way. You know what I mean? That you just kind
Yeah.
of like you kind of are like, okay, we get closer and keep building towards it. Obviously, your bank balance is like, what are you doing? But yeah, it's kind of that thing of trying like it's so cliched about the journey and all this, but like trying to get the enjoy, which I love. Like I love the little gains or like knowing like for example, like when we started working together, we can see with like my performance, using training peaks or just measuring what I'm lifting in the gym, like we're we're not at the plateau stage. It can still grow, like if I can stay consistent, which is really cool. I love that. So I think if it comes to a point where I don't want to go to the high mountains. There'll be something else in my life, like, whether I don't have the body to do it anymore, which I think I'm way off, to be honest, at 43. I have like a long career in the mountains as long as I want it, but there'll be something else, man. If it's, long distance biking or there'll be something that I need that something there all the time for sure. Otherwise, I just won't be in balance and I won't be the best version of myself for myself or people in my life either. I can, exactly that.
Yeah. Well, that's a perfect way to wrap this up. Jam, thanks so much for taking the time to talk today. Yeah, it's wonderful to hear your perspective and your experience up on the mountain. And I am super stoked to work with you for another year to get you ready for Mount Everest with no O's next year.
Super, Larry. Thanks so much for having me on. It was an absolute pleasure. And yeah, looking forward to more training together, man. Thank you.
All right, you bet.